Dr. Vince, we're on to the critical topic of sleep. Why is sleep such an essential factor to Alzheimer's disease and essential to the anti-Alzheimer's prescription?
Well, it is part of the sentinel risk factors, and as I mentioned, if your dopamine and serotonin levels are low, you're not going to have the willpower to get on any diet, to do any type of a lifestyle. In fact, what's very prevalent in the United States today is a concept that sleeping is a waste of time. Second is that, in fact, many of the things that we do and consume actually cause sleeplessness. There is really now what I call a crisis on sleep medication. Everyone is taking them, and in fact, may be the major reason for sleep problems. And the final factor is obstructive sleep apnea. It is the sleeping epidemic of America. And as I had mentioned, there is a 12-fold increase in Alzheimer's disease with sleep apnea. Listen to these questions, and I would advise the listeners to mark down which ones they answer yes to. Have I been told I snore loudly or gasp for air but don't remember when I wake up? Second, do I have high blood pressure? Third, am I gaining weight? Fourth, do I have headaches in the morning when I wake up? Fifth, am I losing my sex drive? Sixth, do I feel sleepy even with a full night's sleep? 7, do I fall asleep during the day, especially, for instance, watching TV or after eating, or especially if I stop at a light? A recent survey showed that 82% of major accidents are due or associated with lack of sleep. If you answered at least yes to the first 3, especially number 1, that you snore, and you're over 50 and overweight, you have sleep apnea and must immediately go to your physician to get a sleep study. Next, do I use antacids or wake up with heartburn? Do I wake up at night coughing or wheezing? Do I have frequent sore throats? If you've answered yes to these 3, or even 1 out of these 3, there's a very good chance that you are suffering from GERDs, gastroesophageal reflux. This can easily be treated with diet, and especially the harmonic diet. At night, are my legs tense, aching, or crawling? Must I get up and walk during the night? Do I get leg cramps? Now, if you've answered yes to these, the chances are that you may have what we call restless leg syndrome, which is very easily treated by certain drugs, and often which is also familial. That is, other people in your family also have it. Now let's get back to the questionnaire. Do I awaken at night at the same time? That is maybe 2 or 3 hours after you've fallen asleep, or sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Do I awaken with dread? Do I feel afraid to go to sleep? Does it take me a half hour or more to fall asleep? Do I worry about things when I wake up in the middle of the night and can't let them go? If you've answered yes to any one of these, you are probably suffering from anxiety, or especially if you're waking up in the middle of the night with dread or with ruminations. This is a clear sign of depression, and it must be treated.
What is sleep, and why is it essential?
Sleep is an active unconsciousness as opposed to coma, in which it is a passive unconsciousness. During sleep, many things are happening. And sleep is so important because it is at that time that it reorganizes our memories. Memories are actually stored. Our neurotransmitters are replenished. Our growth hormones and many other type of hormones are also activated. Well, I often say sleeplessness is like a sailboat without wind, or a car without gas. Remember, it is during this time of sleep that we're replenishing our energy, we're replenishing our neurotransmitters, and we're replenishing our hormones. And not only that, but there are many other factors that are going on which have to do with memory and with our ability to make decisions the following day. And so when we're not sleeping, in fact, we will not do as well on tests. In fact, one study had shown students who got a full night's sleep and other students who did not sleep and pulled an all-nighter, really going over the same material over and over again, did worse than those who had only gone over it once and taken the exam. So sleep is truly essential for our ability to function. Consequences of too little sleep are impaired memory and thought processes, as I just mentioned. Second, depression. Third, a decrease in our immune response. And one of the reasons for that is that it is during sleep that our cortisol level goes the lowest. If we don't get good sleep, our cortisol level remains high, and this causes impairment of our long-term immune system and an increased likelihood of Alzheimer's disease, cancer, and, as I had mentioned, one experiment showed you will get 3 times the amount of colds or flu symptoms. Now, fourth, our pain threshold. One of the main treatments now for pain is increasing our dopamine and serotonin levels. Dopamine and serotonin are simple dampeners on pain. The brain does not receive the message. And so, by not sleeping and getting a decrease in these pain receptors, we appreciate a great deal more pain. So, for instance, Secutieri in Italy back in the 1960s showed when dopamine and serotonin were depleted in students, by walking a half a mile, their feet would begin to hurt. They had pain and aches all over. By replenishing that dopamine and serotonin, all the symptoms disappeared. So yes, pain perception in itself can be solely due to dopamine and serotonin and poor sleep. And that is one of the reasons why we find in many people with fibromyalgia that dopamine and serotonin may be a central cause of the disease. Number 5, it decreases brain maturation and neurogenesis. And I can't talk about this enough. What I mean by that is that serotonin and dopamine have been noted to be important for brain maturation in children. And remember I had mentioned that there's a thing called neurogenesis. And that is the brain, even at 50 and 60 and 70 years of age, will produce new brain cells, especially with exercise. If serotonin and dopamine levels are not at sufficient levels, that maturation does not occur. And therefore, our ability to use neurobics, or accentuating the brain's reserve, our ability to use exercise to increase the number of cells, and stop the onslaught of the usual atrophy of the brain that occurs between 50 and 70, we're not able to do it. In fact, the incidence of Alzheimer's disease in people who are depressed and so therefore have low dopamine and serotonin levels is double. Also, sleeplessness is clearly associated with obesity. And the reason for it is that, once again, our ability to withstand temptation because of low dopamine doesn't exist. And in fact, because we're tired, we need artificial high. Refined carbohydrates is one of those things of giving us an artificial high. However, it always has a rebound. And that is a half hour to an hour and a half after we've had those carbohydrates, we are doubly tired. And of course, what happens, you eat your refined carbohydrates, you stimulate ghrelin, that substance which is more addictive than cocaine. You increase your insulin levels, the glucose is stored as fat, you become obese. Obesity in itself can cause Alzheimer's disease 7-fold in women with a waist of 35 or greater, and 3 to 4 times in men with a waist of 40 or greater. Rat experiments showed that those rats that were deprived of sleep died within 5 weeks. Also, they started developing sores on their paws. They also developed coronary and pulmonary problems. So it's very clear that sleep is essential. There are various stages of sleep. Stage 3 and 4 of sleep are what we call deep sleep, and it is during these times that we really replenish our dopamine, our serotonin, very important for our neurotransmitters, together with our hormones, especially growth hormone. REM sleep is also essential, and REM sleep is important because it is during that time that we have memory consolidation, and this helps us with our decision-making capacity and also with our recent memory. Several other experiments have shown that those people who are sleepless have a decrease by 14% of their hippocampus, that area that is essential for memory, especially recent memory, and learning.